Hi, I'm George Gerbo, and welcome to Washington Times Weekly, where we get a chance to sit down with our reporters and dig into their coverage of the latest news and events. Joining me today is White House correspondent Carrie Pickett. Carrie, it's good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You're doing a little bit of double duty, going back and forth between the White House and Capitol Hill, which is what the negotiations have been over the past few weeks on this big, beautiful bill, as President Trump calls it. It has finally made its way and secured final passage in the House of Representatives, 215 to 214, after a lot of late night wrangling and Rules Committee markups and this, that, and the other. Speaker Mike Johnson, he has diligently shepherded this bill through. President Trump accused some members of Congress of grandstanding and holding up the process. But the Speaker and the Whip and his Republican leadership colleagues have finally shepherded this through to passage.
That's right. George, this was a bill that just eked by 215 to 214 on an early morning vote, but you had a lot of sleepy lawmakers who really just spent their entire night here on Capitol Hill. You had only two Republicans who voted against this bill. That was Congressman Warren Davidson of Ohio and Thomas Massie of Kentucky, and only one congressman, that was Andy Harris. He's the chairman of the Freedom Caucus. He voted present. All three were pretty much concerned about the measure's impact on the deficit. Thomas Massie, he just slammed this bill as a, quote, debt bomb ticking. Now, obviously, Thomas Massie, he's very consistent with how he looks at legislation like this. He's pretty much a libertarian. And you're going to hear the same thing coming from Rand Paul of Kentucky, and he's good over in the Senate. He's pretty much saying more or less like the same thing. So he does not support the bill either, and we'll see where he's going to be going and how he describes the bill up in the upper chamber. But right now, the CBO estimates that the bill adds about $3.8 trillion to the deficit over 10 years. So there's going to be some fighting back and forth. The Senate obviously has a lot of ideas as to how they want to change the bill, as much as Trump is saying, no, keep it as is. That's not how Congress works, especially with a budget reconciliation in the upper chamber. What that means is they'll only have to pass this bill by a simple majority. They won't need Democrats' help with this, because usually they need 60 votes to end debate, and then they can move on. No, they'll only need a simple majority, but that also means they can't lose 3 Republicans on this. So they're going to have to deal with people like Susan Collins, Rand Paul, like I just mentioned, as well as you have Senator Josh Hawley, who says do not touch Medicaid. And so that is something that they're going to have to deal with.
And you mentioned Massie and Davidson. Ironically, their districts border each other on each side of the Ohio River. Davidson, it's Speaker John Boehner's old seat there in the suburbs of Cincinnati, and Thomas Massie, his district, Northern Kentucky, that borders the Ohio River. So similarities, not just voting against this bill, but in where they represent. What were the main hangups for them? And we in your reporting earlier this week, the number had been roughly around maybe 10 to 12 Republicans that had reservations. I think of Chip Roy of Texas. I think of Victoria Spartz of Indiana, whose names had come up as being potentially votes that could be swayed one way or the other. But what was the main driving forces behind the Freedom Caucus-led wing of the party to object to the passage of this bill?
A lot of it had to do with the deficit spending. A lot of it had to do with the debt. When I was talking with Thomas Massie, he felt that the Medicaid cuts weren't enough. He felt that the Medicaid cuts weren't even real. And so, this is like anything else. Sometimes we'll say that, okay, well, here we have all these supposed cuts, but at the same time, the offsets weren't really offsets. Some will say that these tax cuts, well, were they necessarily tax cuts, or were they just saying that these tax cuts are going to be permanent because these were already tax cuts? These were tax cuts from 2017. It's just that they're just simply not going to expire. But at the same time, if they simply just let them expire, then you're going to get tax hikes. So this is an issue of how do you interpret semantics.
Yeah, Republicans say that spending cuts and the regulatory rollbacks will help limit the deficit. The CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, scored it as potentially adding $3.8 trillion to the deficit over the next 10 years. But Republicans believe that the economic growth from these cuts and these regulation rollbacks will more than counteract a lot of that. To get you out of here on this, what are our next steps in this process? Of course, it'll go to the Senate. You mentioned reconciliation, and then changes, whatever form or fashion they may be, expected then for the bill to come back to the House in some sort of summer target or timeline to get this done. Speaker Johnson did deliver on his promise to get it passed through the House by Memorial Day. So then what does it look like for final passage or coming back to the House after the Senate has its way with it?
That's right. You're having some Republicans who are looking to make some of these business and expenses and pro-growth policies. They're looking to actually make them permanent. Once again, one of the issues that there is concern about is that whether or not these Medicaid cuts could actually make it through the Senate, or whether or not they're going to have to reduce these Medicaid cuts. That's a big issue. Remember, when we went through Obamacare, and that was like, my goodness, that was like when I first started covering Congress. That was back in the early 2010 to 2009, 2010. That was when they had to put it through the bird bath. It was, and make sure that it actually can go through budget reconciliation. And they may have some fight with the parliamentarian here. So they want to make sure that's budget neutral, and that whatever is inside this bill actually can go through budget reconciliation. So it's going to be a fight not just within the GOP, but it could be a fight with the parliamentarians. So we're going to have to see whether or not they can actually get it through, and then do it before July 4th. So that could be an interesting fight there.
Yeah, the named after the late senator from my home state, Robert C. Byrd, who is a stickler for parliamentary procedure. And so we'll see if the modern version of the bird bath still exists in some form or fashion as this bill works its way through the Senate. Carrie, I appreciate the time as always. Thank you.
Sure thing. Take care.
You can find Carrie's reporting at WashingtonTimes.com as well as on social media. I'm George Gerbo. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.